Money runs the lights, fills the shelves, and keeps paychecks moving, so why does the machine that moves it keep stalling? If adults run the system, why do they keep breaking it? Think about the last time prices jumped and your cart suddenly bought less. Or when a friend lost a job, not because they failed, but because the economy hiccuped and businesses panicked. A crisis is that moment when confidence flips, lenders stop trusting borrowers, buyers stop trusting sellers, and ordinary people discover that numbers on a screen can shrink faster than a heartbeat. It feels technical from far away. Up close it looks like canceled plans, late rent, and savings you thought were safe slipping away. Here's the simple truth: money is a story we agree to believe, and crises begin when that story no longer feels credible. Too much borrowing, too little caution, prices that rise just because yesterday they rose, bubbles form, fear follows, and what seemed certain turns slippery. If that sounds abstract, picture a row of dominoes on your kitchen table. One bank leans on another, a company on cheap credit, a family on a paycheck, and when the first tile tips, the clatter reaches your grocery bill and your rent. We'll walk through a century of tipping points, roaring 20s to Great Depression, oil shocks, the SNL mess, dot-com fever, the housing crash, and the pandemic whiplash. Different costumes, same plot twist, promises made faster than reality can keep. I'll show you what sparked each fire, how the flames spread, and why the warnings were there in plain sight. As you listen, notice the pattern: debt swelling, speculation sold as destiny, sleepy watchdogs, and people invited just before the bill arrives. By the end, you won't just recognize the shape of a crisis, you'll feel it truly earlier, the way you sense rain before clouds gather. You'll understand why markets forget, why leaders hesitate, and how to protect your savings, your plans, and your peace of mind. And the next time the headlines start shouting, you'll know whether it's noise, or the first domino about to fall. Picture shop windows gleaming in 1929, jazz drifting from doorways, and a new word on everyone's lips: easy. Easy credit. Easy profits. Easy dreams. Factories hum, radios crackle, and stock pages read like treasure maps. Ordinary clerks become investors, teachers borrow to buy shares, and barbers swap tips like oracle kings. If prices only go up, why not take a little loan? Why not take two? The roaring 20s sell a tomorrow that arrives early, dressed in champagne and confetti, and most people believe it. After all, neighbors are getting rich, bosses are optimistic, and the bank manager smiles at every deposit. Confidence feels like gravity, constant, invisible, irresistible, until the floor tilts. Briefly. But markets are human stories wearing numbers, and one October morning belief blinks. A trickle of selling turns into a wave. Phones jam. Tickers fall behind. Rumors outrun facts. Traders shout themselves hoarse as prices slip, then skid, then plunge. Black Tuesday isn't thunder from a distant sky, it is 1,000 small feet running for the same exit at once. What does that feel like at home? A father opens the paper and sees a year's savings sliced in half. A mother wonders whether tomorrow's rent has a landing place. Children hear the quiet between their parents' sentences and learn a new meaning for maybe. Under the headline sits a simple chain. Banks lent freely against soaring stocks. When collateral evaporates, balance sheets do too. People rush to withdraw cash because safety suddenly has a shape, and it is paper in the hand. A bank run is a fear loop. The more you worry, the faster you hurry, and your hurry makes the worry true. Thousands of institutions fail. Businesses cut shifts, then wages, then workers. Unemployment rises, streets grow thin and quiet, a hush made of missing paychecks and paused plans. Kitchens stretch leftovers. The shock does not stop at America's shore. Credit links nations like railroads link towns. When one locomotive derails, schedules everywhere fail. Countries tighten into themselves, raising tariffs to protect local jobs, but protectionism acts like a wall that also keeps customers out. Global trade shrivels. Factories idle. The illness spreads because everyone chooses safety at once and accidentally starves the system of circulation. Boom becomes bubble becomes crash becomes contagion, and ordinary lives carry the weight. Bills outpace hope. Out of that fatigue steps Franklin Delano Roosevelt, voice steady, insisting that fear itself is part of the spiral. He closes banks temporarily to sort the solvent from the failing, ensures deposits so a paycheck can rest without a prayer, and hires people to plant forests, build roads, paint murals, and wire the countryside. You might call it stimulus. A farmer called it work that arrived before the harvest. The New Deal does not end the Great Depression by itself, but it patches roof, clears the track, and relights porch. Recovery arrives with a heavier price than policy alone. Mobilization for a world war converts idle factories into arsenals and idle workers into welders, machinists, sailors, and nurses. Government orders fall like rain on a parched field. Production soars, wages follow, and the engine catches. No one should need war to find work, yet history records the mechanism plainly: massive, coordinated demand, funded at scale, aimed at survival. Expectations reset. Why tell this story now? Because it is the first clear photograph of a pattern you will see again: optimism swelling into speculation, leverage hiding fragility, assets priced for perfection, and faith unraveling in a week. It teaches humility about booms, caution about debt, and the danger of slamming doors when neighbors stumble. Institutions matter, but so do choices: diversify, avoid borrowing to gamble, keep cash for storms, which grow quickly, and watch for promises which grow faster than reality. Learn the rhythm, and when the music changes, you will hear the pause and step aside before crush. We take for granted that when we turn a key, the world moves. Cars start, deliveries arrive, lights glow, factories hum. In 1973, that certainty met a hidden valve. Oil wasn't just fuel, it became a lever. Producers tightened supply and made rich economies feel small, not with bombs or tariffs, but with barrels withheld. The shock wasn't only what changed, but how fast, and how quickly routines revealed their dependence on a liquid pulled from far away. The spark was geopolitical. After war in the Middle East, exporters in OPEC cut production and embargoed nations seen as adversaries. Fewer tankers sailed, fewer barrels crossed oceans, prices didn't creep, they vaulted, roughly quadrupling within months. Stations posted, "No gas." Lines wrapped around blocks, inching toward pumps that might close before noon. Odd even rationing appeared. Parents mapped routes, counting hills and the mercy of half a tank. Cities sounded different: less traffic, more waiting. A truck without diesel is a museum piece, a plane without jet fuel is a sculpture. What did it feel like at home? Thermostats nudged down, sweaters became policy, weekend drives disappeared. Receipts grew even when baskets stayed the same, because energy is the hidden ingredient in almost everything: fertilizer for crops, heat for factories, fuel for ships and trucks, input for plastics. Inflation arrived not as a shopping spree, but as a cost wave rolling through every aisle. Businesses raised prices to survive, workers asked for raises to keep up, and the loop tightened. Meanwhile, the economy slowed. Orders were trimmed, routes mothballed, rigs parked, and small manufacturers closed on Fridays. There is a word for rising prices alongside a stalling economy: stagflation. Think of it as two headaches at once: your bills climb while your hours shrink. Leaders faced a cruel fork: raise rates to cool prices and risk deeper recession, or cut rates to protect jobs and feed inflation. Confidence wavered because every path carried pain. Unemployment rose, savings eroded, and families learned that stability can fracture from events they never voted on. The chain was plain: embargo to supply shock, shock to costs, costs to inflation, inflation to layoffs and stalled growth. Power shifted with the oil. Exporters gained leverage, petrodollars flowed into global banks, buying assets and influence. Importing nations redrew priorities, energy security became national security. Policies arrived fast: national speed limits, longer daylight saving, tougher fuel economy standards, and strategic petroleum reserves. Countries diversified: some invested in nuclear and coal, others in conservation, insulation, and smaller cars. Domestic drilling expanded where geology allowed. Japan built a culture of efficiency, Europe tightened homes, the United States learned that a mile per gallon can be a form of sovereignty. For ordinary people, the transformation was identity level. We are not powerless, but we are interdependent, and a single choke point can redraw paychecks and plans. Households tried carpools and stricter budgets, companies rethought inventories and routes, investors learned that commodities aren't background noise. The deeper lesson is empowering: resilience is a resource, like oil, only quieter. Understand the chain and you can spot stress early: at the pump, in freight schedules, in airfare. Oil would be used as leverage again, with different sparks but familiar physics. Keep the pattern in mind, and you'll sense the turn before the line wraps the block. That awareness turns anxiety into preparation and choice. It starts like a thriller where you already know the ending, but can't look away. The mid-2000s feel generous: home prices climb, banks mail pre-approved offers, and owning more is sold as safety. If you can't afford the payment, refinance later, tomorrow's value will rescue you. Lenders decide the riskiest borrowers, called subprime, are the most profitable for a while. Salespeople are paid for volume, not wisdom. Teaser rates hide future pain, and a quiet belief settles in: housing never falls everywhere at once. Now the alchemy. Banks bundle thousands of mortgages into mortgage-backed securities, boxes of monthly house payments. Those boxes are sliced into tranches: top layers get paid first and wear the safest label, bottom layers take bruises for extra yield. Then comes a second remix: collateralized debt obligations, reslicing risky leftovers into new towers that look clean. Credit rating agencies, paid by issuers, bless many slices with high grades because models say broad failure is unlikely. Banks borrow heavily to hold inventory, funding long assets with short loans. While music plays, liquidity feels endless. As prices rise, speculation becomes a lifestyle. People flip houses they barely visit. Down payments shrink, standards loosen, stated income loans wink at truth. If a borrower stumbles, the house will be worth more next month, right? Behind the scenes, credit default swaps offer insurance, but sellers haven't priced a nationwide decline. Everyone's safety depends on everyone else's optimism, and optimism isn't collateral. Then the cracks widen. Adjustable rates reset, payments jump, borrowers fall behind. Foreclosures climb, pushing more houses onto the market, which pushes prices down, which creates more foreclosures. The loop bites. Suddenly those safe tranches aren't safe, values drop, and banks can't tell what their boxes are worth. Trust shrivels. Firms stop lending to each other because nobody wants the last mystery. Short-term funding evaporates, balance sheets that looked sturdy yesterday feel hollow today. One weekend in September, the curtain rips. Lehman Brothers fails, finance's largest bankruptcy. A money market fund breaks the buck, and panic jumps from mortgages to everything. Commercial paper market sees. Sound companies can't roll short-term debt to pay next week's bills. Confidence, like gravity, turns to ice underfoot. Policymakers face an ugly choice. Let the fire burn and risk depression, or deploy extraordinary support and be accused of saving arsonists. The United States launches the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP, injecting capital into major banks and backstopping plumbing so payments flow. The Federal Reserve cuts rates near zero, opens emergency facilities, and buys assets. Similar moves echo abroad. Anger is understandable, families lose houses, retirements shrink, small businesses close, workers carry boxes to their cars. Bailouts feel like betrayal when prudence receives no medal. Beneath the outrage sits a map of incentives. Mortgage brokers were rewarded for quantity, not quality. Rating agencies sold certainty that wasn't real. Bankers chased fees by stacking leverage and complexity. Regulators trusted models that assumed storms were rare. Millions were told housing only goes up, that debt equals progress, that signatures were a formality. It wasn't one villain, it was a chorus, harmonized by greed and denial. Recovery takes time. Foreclosure waves crest and recede, loans are modified, central banks keep the patient on life support while jobs slowly return. Reform arrives as Dodd-Frank, higher capital, stress tests, a consumer bureau to police abusive products, derivatives herded onto clearinghouses, living wills so giants can fail without detonating the neighborhood. Imperfect, but a hinge pushing the door toward resilience. What do we carry forward? First, understand funding. Borrowing short to bet long is gasoline near a pilot light. Second, beware engineering that promises return without risk. Complexity can be camouflage. Third, treat ratings as opinions, not guarantees. Finally, protect your own balance sheet, build cash buffers, avoid stretching to impress, and remember that booms whisper before they scream. Learn the pattern, and you reclaim agency the next time exuberance wears a friendly smile and asks for your signature. You probably remember the mood of early 2020. Calendars were full, planes booked, and markets hovered near records, repeating a quiet promise that tomorrow would look like today, perhaps a little better. Then an invisible headline entered the room and turned the lights down. Not a gradual slowdown, but an overnight freeze. Restaurants went dark, offices emptied, classrooms moved to kitchen tables, and supply chains revealed every weak link at once. A cough on one continent paused a paycheck on another. For a moment, time itself felt paused. Normal didn't have a date. Yet, we waited for news, counting days by coffee and headlines. Markets reacted like a fire alarm. In a single month, the Dow posted 3 of its largest point drops ever, and phrases like "limit down" migrated from trading floors to living rooms. Retirement accounts shrank between breakfast and dinner. Selling wasn't calculus, it was a scramble for cash and certainty. Even strong companies plunged because investors weren't grading essays, they were evacuating the building. Meanwhile, ordinary life reorganized around absence, empty stadiums, quiet airports, taped-off playgrounds. Fear wasn't just the unknown virus, it was the question behind every receipt: how long can we hold our breath without income, without customers, without school? Beneath the tickers sat a simple chain. When revenue to millions of businesses is switched off at once, profits don't merely drop, cash disappears, turning into layoffs, missed loans, and closures. The clock, not just the virus, became the fear. Policymakers moved with rare speed. Central banks cut rates to near zero, opened emergency lending windows, and bought bonds to keep credit flowing. Legislatures sent direct payments, expanded unemployment benefits, and created forgivable loans so paychecks could keep moving. The goal wasn't elegance, it was oxygen, by time so households and employers could bridge the unknown length of the pause. Then came the paradox that still fuels arguments at dinner tables. The economy endured its sharpest shock since the Great Depression, yet stocks staged one of the fastest rebounds on record. How can markets soar while food banks stretch around the block? Because markets price the future rather than the present. With rates pinned low, vaccines on the horizon, and technology enabling work from living rooms, investors imagined earnings returning before storefronts reopened. Wall Street looked 6 to 18 months ahead, while Main Street faced Monday's rent. One measured expectations, the other measured groceries. It felt unfair, confusing, and revealing all at once. The result was a two-track recovery. Software teams shipped features from spare bedrooms while waiters waited for diners who could not return. Delivery networks, chipmakers, and cloud platforms surged, theaters, tourism, and small retailers fought for air. Home prices climbed as mortgage rates fell and space became the new status symbol, while renters faced arrears and anxiety. Savings swelled for some households, vanished for others. The divide wasn't only financial, it was personal. If your skill could travel by Wi-Fi, you accelerated. If it required presence, you pressed pause and reinvented. Hope arrived in syringes and servers. Vaccines rolled out at record speed, and so did telemedicine, digital payments, and collaboration tools that compressed years of adoption into months. Restarting a global machine proved lumpy, ports jammed, semiconductors ran short, and the snapback stirred inflation. Another choice appeared: raise rates to cool prices and risk jobs, or tolerate heat and risk deeper pain later. Through it all, one lesson felt empowering: speed is both the risk and the remedy. Build buffers, diversify incomes, and watch the pattern: optimism, shock, scramble, adaptation, divergence, reconnection. Find yourself on that arc, and you move from bracing to prepared. Here's the uncomfortable secret that becomes your advantage: crises don't repeat events, they repeat patterns. Once you learn the pattern, headlines feel less like thunder and more like weather you can read. Think of this as a pocket compass, simple enough to remember, strong enough to steer you when the room gets loud. 1. Euphoria and overconfidence. It begins with a story that flatters us: we're smarter now, technology solved risk, and this time is different. Prices rise and validate the story, which invites more believers, which raises prices again. Friends brag, bosses nod, and sitting out feels like missing the bus to a better life. The reward centers in our brains light up, and restraint looks old-fashioned. 2. Easy money and excessive risk-taking. Credit loosens, terms stretch, and the guardrails move. Lenders compete to say yes, leverage stacks quietly, and complicated products promise safe returns with glossy names. When money is cheap, mistakes are cheap, until they aren't. The system becomes acrobatic, balanced, impressive, and one wobble from a fall. 3. A trigger shatters the illusion. It can be a rate hike, a default, an embargo, a virus, or simply gravity catching up to hope. The details differ, the function is identical: it punctures the belief that tomorrow will echo today. One missed payment exposes 10, one failed firm exposes 20, and what felt diversified suddenly rhymes. 4. Panic accelerates the collapse. Trust is the oxygen of finance, and panic is a match in a dry room. People dump what they own to raise cash, institutions pull lines, lenders demand more collateral, prices fall because prices are falling. Feedback loops appear, losses force sales that create more losses. Spreads widen, rumors sprint, and the safest asset becomes a full night's sleep. 5. Governments attempt rescue. Firefighters arrive with hoses, rate cuts, guarantees, liquidity lines, stimulus checks, special facilities, and new rules. Sometimes the water saves the block, sometimes it floods the basement. Rescues change who fails now and who pays later, but they also buy time, and time is the only bridge between fear and function. Here's how to use the pattern without pretending to predict clocks. When you feel euphoria tug, ask what story is flattering you. When money grows easy, measure leverage, not logos. When a trigger lands, map the linkages: who depends on whom, funded how, rolling what. When panic starts, slow your breath before you move your money. When rescues arrive, separate plumbing fixes from profit fantasies. Memorize 5 short cues: thrill, stretch, puncture, rush, hose. If you hear them in order, tighten risk. If you hear them in reverse, opportunity may be returning. This isn't cynicism, it's humility with edges. You're not trying to outguess everyone, you're trying to avoid becoming fuel for the fire. You will still feel fear. You're human. But with a pattern, fear becomes information. Instead of asking, "What's happening?" you'll ask, "Which stage am I in, and what does that stage demand?" That question shifts identity, from passenger to pilot. And once you practice it a few times, you won't just survive the next cycle. You'll recognize it early enough to keep your plans intact while others are still debating the weather. Remember, markets are stories about cash flows and confidence, told with numbers. Patterns won't stop storms, but they will tell you where exits and umbrellas are. History doesn't end, it remixes. If you listen closely, the same 5 beats we mapped, thrill, stretch, puncture, rush, hose, are still pulsing under today's headlines. Are we safer? In some ways, yes, banks hold more capital, stress tests exist, plumbing is better. But safety with conditions is not safety without an asterisk, and several asterisks are blinking at once. Global debt sits at record highs, public and private, which makes rising interest rates a magnifying glass over every mistake. Payments crowd out plans, refinancing windows narrow, weak borrowers wobble first, and confidence watches the wobble. Housing affordability is strained because prices ran ahead while mortgage costs reset higher, trapping would-be buyers and pressuring renters. That isn't just uncomfortable, it's the kindling of political and financial stress. Geopolitics adds friction, wars, sanctions, and realignments that can weaponize energy, food, and shipping lanes. We learned in 1973 and again recently that barrels and choke points move prices faster than speeches. Energy shocks don't ask permission, they pass the hat at every checkout line and call it inflation. Banks look sturdier until liquidity moves at app speed. Silicon Valley Bank reminded us that deposits can sprint, not stroll, and asset-liability mismatches can implode a balance sheet before lunch. Regulators reacted, but the physics remain: funding short and investing long is still a cliff in bright daylight. Meanwhile, a different tremor approaches from technology. AI accelerates productivity and possibility, but it can also displace roles before new ones absorb the shock. Communities built around routine tasks may feel the floor shift. That transition, layered on high debt and higher rates, is not a gentle slope. Commercial real estate bears watching, offices with vacancies must refinance at steeper rates, while lenders prefer the exit. Outside traditional banks, private credit and shadow finance have grown fast, promising yield with limited transparency, the same old temptation wearing a new suit and faster watch. So, are we safer now, or sitting on another ticking bomb? The answer is both caution and agency. You cannot diffuse global risks alone, but you can refuse ignorance. Build buffers. Match liabilities to cash flows. Diversify skills for an AI-shaped market. Watch debt, duration, and exposure to energy and geopolitics. If the pattern starts humming, thrill, stretch, puncture, move early, not perfectly. The next episodes will dive into these fault lines one by one. Stay curious, because the cost of learning is tiny next to the price of surprise. Here's the truth I hope stays with you: money doesn't break by itself, people bend it. We chase the thrill, we stretch the rules, a pin finds the balloon, panic does the rest, and officials race in with hoses. Different costumes, same choreography. That means crises aren't meteors from space, they're weather patterns we can read. And once you can read them, you stop feeling small. Today, you own a map. You know what euphoria sounds like, what easy money smells like, what a trigger feels like in your gut, and how rescue water can flood as well as save. You also know your part: build buffers before headlines scream, match your promises to your cash flow, diversify both skills and income, and keep curiosity louder than fear. This isn't about outsmarting markets, it's about not donating your peace of mind to the next frenzy. If this changed how you see the cycle, make that your new identity, the calm one who notices patterns early and moves deliberately. I'll keep bringing you clear breakdowns of debt, energy, banks, jobs, and technology, so you can protect what matters and grow it with intention. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs steadiness, and tell me which fault line you want decoded next. The last thought is a gentle warning and a promise: the next one could be sooner than anyone thinks, but you won't meet it unprepared. You'll meet it with language, lenses, and a plan. Stay, learn, prepare, and help someone else do the same.